Welcome, everyone. We'll give it a few seconds for everyone to join the room.
So JC is not there yet.
I think my colleague Jacco is trying to fix that in the back end.
Okay.
I can make it a very long introduction. It's no problem. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We'll probably start in about a minute. As always with webinars, it's there's always something challenging in the technical side of it. But we're happy to all be here and we look forward to a very inspiring session. Yeah, Asha, nice to see you. We'll start in a few seconds. We'll make it a long introduction so we can make sure that our final panelist can also join the session. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a technicality there. Hello, Cara. Good to see you here. Dr. Abdallah, Maisa, good to see you here as well. Let's start. I'm sure we can fix it along the way. Yes, I see JC there. Thank you for joining, JC. We look
Hello,
forward to
everyone.
hearing from you. Let me start quickly then with my introduction because I think we're going to need a lot of time to discuss this very timely topic. So yeah, good afternoon, and for some of you, maybe still good morning. Thank you for joining us to talk about sustainability. I'm Lisette van Gessel. I'm head of marketing at Knowledge, and I will be moderating the discussion today. Before I start, I would like to thank my marketing colleagues and the Solitas marketing colleagues for their support in pulling this all together, and especially Jacqueline, who you will not see, but she will be in the back end supporting us and make sure that everyone is on screen. So thank you for that. This topic is actually very close to my heart, and working in the Middle East for the past 2.5, 3 years now, I've noticed that across the Middle East, sustainability is really moving from kind of like aspiration to implementation. And the national transformation programs, such as the ones from Saudi, from Egypt, from the UAE, but also from Oman, some until like around 2030 at the moment, but Oman already looking forward to 2040. They really build these long-term development strategies and are creating new expectations for new universities in that sense. So the visions and the strategies emphasize building this knowledge-based economy through scientific research, innovation, entrepreneurship, modernization of higher education institutions, even. And the strategy really highlights the integration of education, research, market connectivity to really achieve that sustainable economic, environmental, but also social development. So for institutions, it's not about being the center of teaching or um, and research, of course, anymore, but also to act as this support to shape the skills, the knowledge, and the leadership that's needed for this more sustainable future. So at the same time, I think sustainability itself is also evolving. So we moved from thinking of just maybe environmental studies and specialized research centers to really recognizing it as a core competency. And every graduate should possess, regardless of their discipline or career path, a good share of knowledge about sustainability. So it raises these important questions for our higher education leaders. How can institutions align with those national priorities while still being on your academic mission? It's actually part, hopefully, of an academic mission. And how do universities embed sustainability across teaching, operations, research, culture? And how can we measure that, right? Because how are we truly knowing that we're making an impact? So today we'll explore these themes. So I'm super excited that we can take a bit of a more global or maybe European view and talk about some regional perspectives. So I'm very delighted to be joined. Oh, let me share my slide. I have multiple things to do today, so bear with me. There we go. So I'm very delighted to be joined by Jean-Christophe Carteron, and I'm allowed to call him JC, as I understood correctly, founder
Exactly.
and president of Sulitest. Sulitest is a global initiative dedicated to measuring and advancing sustainability literacy worldwide since 2013. And previously, JC led the CSR, it's called CSR, right? Yes, strategy at Catch Business School in France. And he's also board member of various NGOs, co-chair of the UN-backed higher education sustainability initiative, also known as HATI, and a key figure in social responsibility and sustainability assessment for higher education. So very excited to have you here. And I believe you have your MBA from Catch Business School. So before I hand over to JC, I also would like to already welcome Cameron Cardan. So Cameron is the founder and CEO of Knowledge, where I'm also working for, what I'm also working for. And he founded Knowledge in 2012 to support research and education in the MENA region. He's also the visionary behind Zendi, and Zendi is our mission-driven AI-powered research library, providing affordable access to scholarly literature worldwide. And currently, we're also working on a lot of these AI tools separately and how they embed in the university and especially the library. And his extensive experience of working with higher education institutions across the MENA region provides this valuable insight into how universities can translate national ambitions into institutional action, because that's what we're here for. So together, they will help us explore the evolving role in universities in sustainability, the importance of the literacy, and the practical steps that institutions can take to move from commitment to kind of like measurable progress. So I would like to now hand over to JC to give us a short introduction of Sulitest, and then maybe following, you could give us some of your insights from a global perspective and how the role of the university is evolving for sustainability.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisette, for that introduction, and hello, everyone. As you mentioned, I will wear different hats to try to answer your questions today. Of course, I'm currently the president of the Sulitest movement, but as you mentioned, I'm the co-chair of AZ, and AZ, it's a global movement which brings together all the UN entity working with higher ed as well as academic networks. And Sulitest, we have two organizations, one NGO with UN accreditation for the advocacy part, and one social business which actually spread different assessment tool like Task, which is a kind of TOEFL for sustainability, and we spread that worldwide. So to answer your question on the role and the changing role of university, I think it's really important to start with this idea that it doesn't come from nowhere. This is part of an historical context. Firstly, there have been always amazing people in every single institution fighting to integrate sustainability more and more into higher ed. So it could be research, it could be in teaching, it could be, of course, in the campus life, etc. And this can come from, of course, professors, but also administrative staff and even students. And when we launched AZ in 2012, and actually it was at the Rio Plus 20 conference, the world conference, the biggest conference, by the way, organized by the UN linked to sustainability. And actually things start to change. And up until then, to summarize, when we at the UN level, when we spoke about education, it was mainly through UNESCO and mostly focused on how to give access to primary and secondary school education, secondary education in developing country, and nothing really at the level of higher ed. And we know that all the decisions that our students are taking have a big impact. So it was really crucial to launch that. So we launched AZ, and it became the biggest self-contribution for the World Rio Congress. And when the former UN General Secretary Ban Ki-moon came back to New York, he mentioned for the first time that higher ed, university all over the world are really key players, and that could and should contribute to building a sustainable future. And then since then, with EAZ, we are the gateway for the SDG process through the high-level political forum every July in the UN. So what we can say at the global level, it's that it's not homogeneous at the global scale. We have seen major development, regional development, such as Europe with the Green Com, for instance, national level, and we will discuss a little bit further, but also thanks to external stakeholders like ranking and accreditation bodies. So nothing is perfect, but at least we have seen lots of change in the last couple of years.
Thank you. So, Cameron, would you like to share a little bit about why sustainability literacy is becoming this strategic priority for higher education in the MENA region?
But first, I have to unmute. Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here. Special thanks to all the colleagues for all the preparation and the partnership with StudyTest, JC, Alex, and all colleagues to be here. So first of all, I would like to start by why this topic is important to us. Of course, the work that we do at Knowledge testifies to that, but also we're involved in the formation of Forum, the Forum for Open Research in MENA, supporting open science policy. And recently, we have acquired ACES with a focus of research impact on society and solving society challenges. So in general, sustainable literacy has become a strategic priority because governments in MENA are increasingly looking at universities as drivers for national transformation and not just simply providers of education. I need to emphasize that when we talk about MENA, there are many countries in this sort of geographical boundary, and not all countries are at the same level and have the same priorities. So it's really, really generic. And it's only by drilling down into specific countries that we see all the action that is taking place in the ground. But we've got examples from the Vision 2030 from Egypt, Vision 2030 Saudi, UAE, we are UAE 2031. Lizette earlier mentioned Oman, the 2040 vision, that have all embedded higher education, research, innovation, human capital development as really their long-term national visions. And basically, universities are also prepared to are expected to prepare graduates that can really contribute towards the diversification that is part of that vision in this region, moving away from oil-based and fossil fuel-based economies, working on climate resilience, building innovation ecosystems, And we've recently seen the drive on in AI in UAE and Saudi Arabia, with UAE having, for example, the first minister of AI in the world. So it's really the whole topic of sustainability. It's moving away from just an environmental agenda to really a competitiveness agenda among nations in this region. Because at the end of the day, institutions really need to be able to provide students that can focus on solving some of regional, also global challenges. As I mentioned, economic diversification is important. The climate resilience, and being more involved in innovation ecosystems. So, depending on the priority that is set in each of these visions, the roles of universities are becoming more and more prominent.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, thanks both for setting the scene. And I'd like to probably start by looking at some of the broader policy environment. So across MENA, universities are operating, and you will also see a poll launching. It would be really interesting for us to understand at which level your university and you on a personal level are invested in this topic. But across MENA, I think universities are operating within an ambitious national development agenda that kind of places increasing emphasis on sustainability, innovation, but also human capital development. So maybe the question now is, how can they do this effectively and strategically? So JC, with your experience in Europe, would you be able to share some successful alignment between higher education and national agendas, maybe in France? For
Yeah.
example, what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, so if you really want to change a system, it can come from different sources. In some country, students can be really a driving force behind, and we have seen the best example that I have was in the UK. The students in UK, they were so powerful that they were able to really push university individually, but also the whole ecosystem to change some course, the content of the course. So it can be really a driving force. Then, of course, sometimes you have a movement through the institution. When in my previous school, we launched different research chairs, so we collect some money, and we became to be recognized as expert on that. And so the movement can come from the institution. It can come, of course, from we mentioned that from accreditation, rankings, etc., etc. But of course, when a government imposed or pushed something, yeah, of course, the impact is really, really important. So in France, if I take the example in France, we were really fortunate that we have two major academic networks. One, which is the public association of universities, and the other, it's business school and engineer schools. And 20 years ago, and I was lucky to be part of that, we agreed to work together with the government and to build the first self-assessment framework, something called the Green Plan, which is still alive. And it was really something to help institutions to understand what they should do, what they could do, and also how they can measure it in terms of and covering the full scope: research, pedagogy, and the campus management, etc. So. And this was really a useful seed because we start to have the same language at the level of each institution, not only showing how good we were, but at least, okay, I can see where I am. And then more recently, probably 2 or 3 years ago, we had in the business school sectors, public and private networks develop something really interesting, a competency framework on sustainability, which actually serves today as a guide to defining the learning objective for every management programs. So it's really something which is really useful as a tool for the management sector. And then and to be honest, it's not always the case, but we were really fortunate to have an amazing minister of higher education 4 years ago, and who for the first time imposed to all academic institutions. We are talking in France of 1.7 million students, and so it's start to be something. And she imposed some rules, but really go beyond the campus management. Of course, you have to take care of your waste, you have to take care of CO2 emissions, etc., working for diversity. But this year, for instance, in 2006, 100% of the bachelor students must have completed a compulsory module and it will be assessed and roll up of all degree program, whatever the topic, management, medicine, whatever. So it's really, when it's coming from the government, of course, it's really a huge support. And then we were lucky because the government have found two major projects. They put 8 million euro to build the National Resource Hub, whose mission is to catalog and promote educational resource for students and professors. So it's really a huge hub. And very recently, the Expandia project, and we are very, very lucky and happy because Suldites is the leading organization of that project, with the aim of helping 6,000 faculty in higher ed, not to turn them into sustainability lecture, but to help them to take sustainability topics into their own discipline. What does it mean for marketing, for finance, for biology, etc., etc.? And actually, it's going to be something which we hope, scale will have an amazing impact because the lecture sometimes they can be a little bit lost. So yes, big movement, but thanks to the government, to be honest.
For sure. Yeah, we're not there yet, but very exciting. Actually, before I ask Cameron about how our universities could better align their institutional strategy, it's interesting to see that over 70% of the participants in this webinar answered that their sustainability program is either in progress in the institution or is just getting started. So it's another confirmation of this the right timing for this webinar. But also then, Cameron, how can those universities better align their institutional strategy with those national sustainability priorities and vision programs that we see across the larger MENA region?
Okay, first unmute. Yeah, so in general, when there's a national vision, the most successful institutions, they just start by mapping their teaching, research, innovation, community engagement activities, all directly against those national priorities. And there's, of course, examples that I gave before. However, there are a couple of things that we need to take into context. In general, there's a big, in our region, diversification in the terms of private higher education versus national higher education. And of course, the agenda and the priorities become slightly different. Another trend that I would like to mention over here is the whole concept of the fourth generations of universities, 4GU. And basically it really, rather than looking at teaching and learning outcomes, it really looks at, the holistic objective, the vision of the university, and it really maps it against, that whole societal impact. A different way at looking at sustainability, more in an applied way. And we've seen examples from UAE, for example, Khalifa University being involved. So I recently heard Abu Dhabi University being involved in 4GU as well. As JC mentioned earlier, a lot of these programs traditionally started out from the K-12, the education sector, rather than the higher education sector. And for example, we even have the UAE National Strategy for Higher Education, Green Education Partnership Roadmap that really emphasize in building that climate integrated curricula in all the schools. Another regional trend that happened in the past years was hosting COP27 and COP28, which led to an overview throughout higher education institutions, throughout schools, a lot of activities to raise the awareness of sustainability around the region. And one of the interesting examples that I saw and I was partially involved in was, and this was during both COPs, was with University of Exeter. And it was like a clear example of the importance of partnership in that sustainable literacy. Whereas in this particular case, you had the Faculty of Medicine, Faculty of Humanities, Social Sciences, coming together with the UK Met Office, and looking at how rather than moving towards a doom and gloom scenario where the vocabulary previously used to more, positive reinforcement and the power that, humanities and social sciences role in raising the awareness and raising this literacy. And this was also linked to school programs as well. It linked art, humanities, science, medicine science, to really come up with tangible outcomes and to get involvement from both the higher education sector and the K-12 sector. So at the end of the day, it really comes down to the question for the university leaders that how does, every graduate that comes out of my university, every research program can contribute towards that sort of longer term vision from a sustainability perspective.
Yeah.
Please,
JC, please.
Yeah, just to jump on what Karen was just mentioning, I fully agree. My first recommendation is to take a snapshot. Where are we? If you want to know, if you want to move, you need to know two things: where you want to go and where you start. One thing which actually helps us in France was the fact that we built the first framework. It's available on the government. We can share that later on. But it's great because you start to know, as if you want to have the snapshot, you need to know what should you look for. You know what I mean? And since it's important to use that, and of course after that it's to assess, and we will discuss a little bit further later about that. And what we have seen, it's we launch in the decade of Education for Sustainability was launched in 2004 by UNESCO. Okay, so long time ago. It took something like 15 years to be somewhere, seriously in higher ed. The great thing is we have lots of people who have done things with success and with failure. And if you are at the beginning of the journey, please learn from the other. It's really great to do mistake, but we have done. For 15 years, I was head of sustainability, so I can write a book of all the good things not to do, But please try to understand, try to look from success and failure from the ecosystem. Sorry, I just want to share.
No, I think that's very valuable information. That's why I invited you, right, to get that knowledge from you from the more global perspective. I also see a comment actually in the chat that she would like to add that in the UAE, there's a large number of universities that are members of UCN, so the Universities Climate Network, that was launched during the COP28. I think it's 2 years ago, right, when that was here. And still going on with many activities under several pillars: research, youth, green campus, I think that's super useful to know. And I think that's a really nice initiative. And I think it can only learn from other regions as well, indeed, on how they took that further. Thank you, Susanna from Sayed University for that addition to the UAE. So this brings me actually to a next topic. So what risks do institutions, in your opinion, face if sustainability remains kind of siloed within specific departments rather than being embedded more institutionally? Is that JC? Do you want to start
Yeah,
to
yeah.
say something
You
about
know
that?
that in higher head, but we are not the only one. But we in higher head, we love silos. You know, we all say
Yeah,
we shouldn't
yeah,
have silos, but there are silos between discipline, between department. Faculty don't always talk to staff don't consider faculty. You know, it's always, we love silos. And of course, for me, it's one of the major problem. The fact that um, we push people in higher head to be expert, and that's super cool. But the problem is when you are expert, you see with your lens. And the idea of sustainability is try to understand, and when you are doing some here, it's going to have an impact here. If I share my own experience when I was the head of sustainability in Cage Business School in France, for me, the best success was when, as an example, we tried to be um, to work on excellence as well as coherence. And it's most of the time we are really good in excellence, but really low in coherence. So I give you just one example. The second or the third research I launched was on sustainable purchasing. On sustainable purchasing, we could have just faculty working, doing academic papers, etc. What we have done, in order to have something as systemic, as open as we can, we invite not only corporation to work in this research area, but also NGO. We had WWF, we had Max Havelaar for fair trade, we have a social business to bring different perspective. And then I invite my purchasing department to be part of the project. So they were in the same time a topic to learn. You know, the school used to have a budget of something, I think, 100 million euros. So the school spend lots of money every year. So why don't we use a concrete case, which was the school itself, to learn from that, to see that no, it's not so easy like this to do sustainable purchasing, for instance. So we managed to have something, a kind of alignment between research, what we teach, because we were able to invite, for instance, NGO talking about sustainable purchasing in a purchasing course, and then the campus management, where we had, for instance, so of course the head of the purchasing department, but we launched, thanks to that, a training program for all the people in every department, the people who give order, you know, I need a computer, I need whatever. So we train all the purchasing department and all the people in each department. So, and again, we were not at all perfect, but at least try always in everything that you do, try to put some coherence in you. And it's difficult, it's the most difficult thing in our head because of the silos. And it's opening the door to, yes, we are not perfect. And I think recognizing that we are not perfect is also a good thing. We are always proud of what we do, and that's cool. But it's sometimes, you know, you start to be blind.
yeah, yeah. We always say if you try to aim for perfection, then you might get to excellence, right? Which is already really nice. And yeah, so Cameron, I know multidisciplinary is close to your heart, so I'm wondering if you're going to say something about that. But what do you
You,
see
you,
as, do you have any additional risks?
Yeah, so for me, as you know, so interdisciplinary is close to my heart, and I really see like it's the way of the future in order to solve regional, national, regional, and global challenges. It's when all departments come together and avoid working in silos towards a common goal. Which, in the case of the topic of today, the common goal is sustainability, which JC, gave a perfect real example of how all these systems can work together. So for me, it always comes back to that interdisciplinary approach and not working in silos, working together towards a common goal. And every topic is important, and it's not just sustainability is not, for example, just a science or biology or environmental study issue, but it stems into business, law, humanities, social sciences. All of these come together. We saw, like in the case of COVID, like it wasn't just a medical issue. It had so many different complications, and for nations to be able to tackle it, it required so many different experts to come together. So for me, there is a danger if it's siloed, and even in terms of the student's perspective, even in terms of research output, and it's only by having that sort of collective approach towards that common goal, whether if it's from a university perspective towards their vision and mission by working in an interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary manner. And when it comes to sustainability, it needs to be integrated across all the different departments.
Yeah.
May I
Yeah, no,
jump
agree.
again, Lisette? May I
Yeah.
jump on what you just mentioned? And I think one of the richness of the SDG, it's an holistic thing. It's far
Yeah.
from being perfect again, but at least we know that nothing is more important than another one. Everything is linked. And actually, the problem working, what I've seen in my career is the people working on one specific field, let's say climate change, don't have any idea about disability. And people working on poverty, they don't know what is biodiversity. And again, it's not a
Yeah.
big deal. You can't be an expert on everything, but at least recognizing that, yes, we are in the same planet with all those topics, and they are all interconnected. And I think it's one of the richness is to be open to say, okay, I won't be an expert on that, but at least I understand the whole picture.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. And it also helps speaking the same language by having all these different topics at the
Exactly.
same level and connected to each other. So no, definitely. I think actually it's a nice bridge towards sustainable literacy to talk about that a little bit more. So the next step is probably when you talk about institutional alignment, when you talk about strategy, to kind of consider the student experience and the competencies that graduates need to thrive in this. And well, we're quite rapidly changing, I think, the last couple of years. So many institutions are now recognizing that sustainability literacy is not limited to being an environmental specialist but that it's really broader than that. And I think the SCG goals definitely helped to understand that a little bit more. But whether students go on to work in business, healthcare, engineering, education, public policy, they will all encounter sustainability related challenges and opportunities probably throughout their careers. So for me, this raises the question like, what exactly do we mean by sustainability literacy, and how can universities develop that effectively? And probably, JC, that's probably a perfect question for you.
Yeah, thanks. If you want your students to act properly, meaning to take informed decision and having not only the short-term version, but the vision, but really a more holistic point of view when they take a decision, they need knowledge, they need skills, and they need mindset. If you are not aware about the problem, there is zero chance that you're going to change anything. If you don't know what to do with that, there is zero chance that you're going to do something. And if you don't have the mindset, it's not my problem, you won't do anything. So the idea for the university is to be able to work on those three things. And of course, there is not one tool taking care of everything. But for me, when we are talking about sustainability literacy, by the way, SULITES means sustainability literacy test, by the way, at the beginning. So it's really something important for us. But it includes also system thinking, critical thinking, of course, ethics, and the ability really to take informed decision, to accept the fact that there is no good well, there are some bad decisions, but there is not a perfect decision. There is always a price to pay. For instance, if I come back to my example of sustainable purchasing researcher, imagine you want to build, I don't know, a glass, or a pen or a chair, whatever. Is it better to have something which is produced locally by disabled people? So you give job for people who actually are far away from the workplace, or is it? But it's in plastic, or is it better to buy something which is coming from all over the world, another place of the world, but it's in great wood, etc. There is no perfect choice, And the idea of understanding that there are, in different contexts, a choice can be a good idea sometime and a bad idea another time. So the idea of pushing students to, for me, sustainability literacy, it's also the idea of holistic point of view and a vision to understand the different impact, whatever the decision I'm going to take on the specific case. And for me, is not to be just aware about climate change because it's the most trendy and fashion thing, which is, of course, a real topic, but really to understand all the covering the full scope. For instance, in Solites, with the tool that we have the planetary boundaries where we have climate change, biodiversity loss, water, etc., etc. But we have also all the social foundation, inequality, governance, etc. But also everything touching how humanity is taking care of that topics, and it's important. And we will, if we dig a little bit about the result that we can see, the trends that we can see, we know that we have lots of people who have some basic knowledge, but then they don't know what to do, and they don't even have an idea of the solution. So it's really being curious, for instance, being able to discuss with people who you don't agree. It's key. I think one of the problem right now is we always discuss, and the social media are really terrible for that. We always discuss with people who agree, and that's super cool. Huh? I like when you love me, but it's not always the only great thing that you have to do. And for us, the idea that higher ed should, of course, give a job for the students. It's one of the key things, but actually it's not. But the society is part of the corporation is part of the society. So how we train people to take care, of course, of their business, to take care of the employees, the colleagues, but also, of course, to be able to understand the impact of what they do and try to reduce the bad and increase the good one.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, very interesting. So I'm being super mindful of time because it's an amazing topic, and I don't know if everyone has a hard stop after the hour. So I'd like to dive a little bit more into the regional part of it, because what I've noticed is that sustainability is very much a global challenge. It's everywhere for everyone, and from society to education to everything. But the solutions probably, I don't know if I'm just saying something because I feel that way or whether there is like a grounded opinion on that. But I feel solutions are often highly local. That's also because we focus on different SDG goals in certain areas, and poverty might not be such a problem in some of the European and North American countries compared to like Southeast Asia and Africa, of course. So I think it's meant to be highly local. So those educational approaches that work in one region may need to be adapted to maybe reflect different social, cultural, and environmental realities in that sense. So Cameron, how important is that regional context when you develop the sustainable education strategies for the Middle East? And maybe as a follow-up, what role can local knowledge and regional expertise play in shaping that more meaningful learning experience?
Yeah, so the regional context is absolutely critical. Like the challenges that are faced in our region are highly specific. We talk about water scarcity, desertification, extreme heat, food security, the rapid urbanization that is happening, energy transition, youth employment, the diversification of the economy. All of these are what shape what sustainability means in practice. So a curriculum that is relevant in Northern Europe may not address the realities that are faced in Doha, in Cairo, in Abu Dhabi, or Casablanca. And in general, the reality is that even students, they engage better if the challenges and the opportunities that I see are most relevant to them. So definitely the regional context is important. So how can that local knowledge and regional expertise help in shaping that? And and basically that local knowledge, it really transformed, that sustainability from something that is from theory into something into practice. So it's really taking those global applications, applying them in national and regional contexts, and really seeing how that knowledge transforms into practice. And it basically, with local case studies, you encourage industry partnership, various government initiatives. So that whole aspect of working collectively together from government to NGOs to higher education to schools to community, this becomes more and more meaningful when you're looking at a local context. And at the end of the day, it's even if there are global frameworks that have been successful somewhere else, it's the ability to take those global frameworks and to put them into practice and to see the real results in your own context. So so the regional context, super important, and it's then when it becomes real, when you really are working on real challenges and you're looking at real partnerships to solve the challenges that are faced within your own society.
Yeah. Yeah. And interesting, because when institutions begin that journey, so many would probably also discover some assumptions about sustainability awareness that don't always match maybe their reality. So JC, what are institutions most often? So what is like the top one or two, or I don't know how many examples you have, that institutions are often surprised to discover when they begin assessing their awareness or their starting point, as you called it earlier, and where they want to go later. So what's like the one thing that you can think of that they are often most surprised about to learn?
Yeah, but first of all, as Cameron mentioned at the beginning, when you start to have the snatch-ups, when you start to have an idea of where you are, of course, you discover stuff. When I launched in my previous school the CSR department, we did this snapshot, and then we recognized that there were hundreds of initiatives, students' initiatives, faculty, all over the place. People don't know each other, but so it's always that. But as soon as you start to have some um, um, real assessment, you can see the great things. So you can see all these richness, but you also it's also a good moment to break an idea that we are perfect. And to be totally transparent, if you in the business school sector, it's probably worse than elsewhere, but we are always the best in the world. We are always perfect. And then we realize when you assess and you say, oh gosh, I thought that because we changed something, and then so you add a course in climate change and you are so happy, or you have an event on biodiversity, whatever, you are proud of that, and then you recognize that it's probably not enough. For instance, with tasks, so our assessment tool, so we have 95,000 people who took it, okay? The average score worldwide is 54 out of 100. Okay, so again, now this is not zero, but when you are the head of faculty or the head of the school or the university, and you realize that your students are not at the level, you start to say, oh gosh, maybe the one who actually tried to push for years, we should help him or her. So then the second thing, and it's really important to understand that there is a huge heterogeneity of the students. It was not the case 15 years ago. When I started to do a conference in 2007 on climate change, it was easier because no one knew anything. So my job was to try to find the best path to bring from zero to somewhere. Right now, if today we start to say, let's discuss about climate change, I'm sure 100% of the people believe that they know something, but with a huge heterogeneity. And it's really, we wrote an article on that. It's absolutely key to understand that, because if you don't know the level of your students, there is a chance that you are going to teach something too high or too low. And this is, one of the key elements, the proximal zone of development when you teach. So they realize that, yes, some students are really a knowledge in surface, and some are really experts, sometimes better than the faculty on some topic. We have to understand that. And we have, and the other thing is, thanks to an assessment, a proper assessment, they realize the huge scope of sustainability. We are not only talking about climate change, we are talking about lots of topics. And they understand that there is absolutely no single program we're going to teach everything. So you recognize that even if you are doing a lot, you won't be able to cover everything, and it's probably not a big deal, but it's how you work with that. And just to close that, what we have seen with those 95,000 people, we see that engineer school, for instance, most of the time are a little bit better than students from business school. We can see that the students will have a better, globally, a better knowledge on social issue like poverty, inequality, inclusion, rather than environmental, except climate. And I think it's really coming to what Cameron was just saying about action. Students are better in definition, and it's important to understand that, rather than the solution. What should the trigger to use? And I think it's, for me, we need to be sure that they have this knowledge to be able to do something, and then after that, they have to put in practice, to learn the trigger to change, to resolve the problem. And really, the action is really the key element. And yeah, I'm going to stop here.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. No, I think we could talk about this so much longer, honestly. But I want to make sure that we touch upon accreditation and rankings as well in this aspect a little bit, because I feel like you have kind of answered, like, why does the measurement matter? I really like to understand that starting point, then perhaps make some changes into your curriculum or into the projects that you offer, and then you measure again, right? So that you can see the starting point. So there's no point of failure. There's a starting point, and there's this growth that you can show. And I think that's what kind of is the most important about the measurement, is being able to show the growth in the knowledge, in how to apply that knowledge and further on. So beyond the internal improvement, the assessment is increasingly influencing probably how institutions are perceived externally, including through accreditation processes, maybe ranking frameworks, and maybe the broader institutional reputation. So, Cameron, let me start with you. What role do you think that standardized assessment plays in accreditation and rankings and institutional reputation?
Yeah, that's a good question, because in general we rely on these assessment plans and accreditations to provide evidence. So I've seen presentations at a national level talking about the SDGs and how, for example, the institutions are working towards SDGs. And simply it was just a mapping of where their curriculum is covering some of those subjects. That was basically, yeah, we're involved in SDG, number 7. And it was just basically because there was research around that topic and there was like publications around that topic. But is there impact? Is it highly relevant? Are those being addressed? More important is, the students, are they actually developing, those sustainable or sustainability competencies, right? So, we all do need to have standardization and standardization, standardized assessments. It really helps institutions to, as you say, to start from somewhere and benchmark that performance across different programs. And without that sort of form of measurement, even if it's not perfect, that benchmarking becomes different, but it's a question of constantly improving that benchmark and to provide evidence. I think that evidence element becomes important. Of course, the reporting element, required at a national level, at a international level when we're talking about all these ranking bodies and so on and so forth. With regards to the topic, that becomes important. And if it's not measured, then you cannot report it. But the whole purpose is to be able to identify those gaps and really those opportunities for improvement. So definitely standardization. It's a whole topic of itself, and what are the best metrics? How to measure something that is qualitative. In some areas, how do you measure real impact? But at the end of the day, if you don't measure and if you don't really have check marks and be able to report things, it literally becomes an aspiration. But when you're able to measure it, it more becomes towards a strategic capability.
Yeah. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, I think we see that often. And I really like that we really commit to some of the SDG goals that we support, because we know as a smaller company we cannot support them all. So we also specifically chose the ones that we want to improve on and help and support and reach that that moment of, hey, we're succeeding. So JC, so how does Solitest help institutions move from that sustainability ambition to measurable action? And do you see any challenges there that they usually face when they start implementing an assessment framework?
Yeah. Again, when I was the head of sustainability, I was always saying that we train responsible manager without any proof that it was the case. So understanding if why you say it's true or not, I was proud of what I've done, but without any tangible proof. So having something which is standardized, and it's not only to compete, but just to understand, what you put in place works or not compared to, because we spend lots of energy, sometimes some money, some resources, etc., etc. Does it work? So what most of our user of the task and the assessment for sustainability knowledge, our assessment tool is really asking them to take it, as you mentioned, when they arrive and when they leave. Okay, and by that they are able to not change the program, but imagine in 1 year, you in a specific year, you arrive and you check when they arrive and they are really good in climate change. Maybe instead of doing a conference in climate change, use that to work on poverty or whatever. You can't change everything, but at least you can fine tune that. And you can also decide what you're going to do and what you won't do. And it's really important. Again, you won't be able to do everything, but decide to work on that topic, and that topic, and say, okay, we want the global knowledge of everyone, basic level for everyone. And then we want to be the top 10 in water, in whatever the topic, And I think it's really, for me, it's really important. But the most important thing is really to share a common language between whatever the master, whatever the topic, and having people, because they share the same language, they're able to agree, to disagree, but to build something together. And I think it's really a key element. So what we have right now with Task, we have, they are using, as I mentioned, when they arrive, when they leave. And then for 2-3 years, we start to become third trust party for rankings and accreditation for QS, THE. Yesterday, we signed with Corporate Knights for the MBA. In France with national rankings, etc., etc. So we start to have this kind of EFMD for the business school. For ranking and accreditation, as you mentioned, Cameron, it's really to give some proof. It's not only, yes, we are the best, but yes. So those are the tangible element.
Yeah. Yeah, internally, it's also important to prove your worth, right? That your project is worth taking further, or initiative, I would say, because a project has an end. And I don't think that's a suitable thing to do for this. I'm aware we're at time, so I understand that some people may have to drop off. I have 2 more questions that I would like to just get on record then, so that people can maybe watch it later. But yeah, anyone who has to drop off, thank you so much for being here. I saw a lively discussion in the chat as well. We will definitely go through all the things that you have mentioned, any questions that you may have still, as we're unfortunately out of time for that. We'll make sure that we follow up with an email and maybe Jacqueline, I'm now talking to my colleague in the back end, if you could already launch the poll, the last poll that we have for you, that would be really useful for us to know. And then I want to go for one question for JC and one question for Cameron. So you talked about it a little bit, JC, but what in your what you have seen are the biggest barriers to embedding sustainability across the diverse academic disciplines?
But for me, there are the faculty is really key. It's why we launched Expandia. Because right now you have, let's say, 10-15% of the faculty who are the part of the vanguard. You have people against, but you don't lose your time with that. But you have 70% of the population who actually are nice people. They want to do the best, but they don't see the link between what they teach and those big challenges. And when they start to recognize that, they are totally lost. So I think helping faculty, right now there are some issue because of some people, because they don't want students doesn't want that, the recruiters that doesn't need that, etc., short vision, but also because there is no incentive. I'm not paid if I'm doing that, but I'm not punish if I don't do anything, and they don't. So we have to really work with the faculty, and we have really to work with head of program because those are the ones who actually are deciding the learning goals. So if you don't put anything in the learning goals, when you prepare, there is huge chance that the faculty will take that into their own course. So two level, at the level of the institution, of course, but the level of the program, and then at the level of the faculty.
Yeah, no, 100%. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's always very useful to have that information. And because we always like to end on a very positive note as well, is how, Cameron, for you, how can university leadership in the Middle East create that long-term cultural change around sustainability? What do you think is the one or two things that could really help making this happen?
Yeah, so that long-term change, it requires leadership commitment. It requires institutional alignment. And as it was mentioned, that accountability and that way of measuring that impact. What stood out from going through the vision, Egypt Vision 2030, Qatar Vision 2030, Saudi Vision, UAE, that all of them, they position higher education institution as a strategic enabler of any sort of transformation. But basically, that change, it requires many action points, at different levels, at the university level, at research level, at student level, from a partnership perspective level. And there's not much time to go through each of those. But in general, that change happens when that sort of decision making and that sort of implementation is seen across the institution, and not as what we mentioned before, in a silo, in a single office, or a single reporting office that is responsible for sustainability. When it becomes embedded into curriculum, into research, into the incentives, into faculty development, into capacity building, it's then when we start seeing those results.
Thank you for that. And yes, this actually concludes our webinar today. So I wanted to quickly, first of all, thank you very much, Cameron. Thank you very much, JC, for this highly insightful discussion. I think if you have time to read the chat later, I'll make sure it gets to you as well, JC. It was very engaging, very interesting to see what's happening in universities across the Middle East region already. I'm thinking already, like, can we do another session? So today's conversation for me has really highlighted that sustainability in higher education is not a standalone initiative. It's a strategic imperative that touches every aspect of university life, really, from institutional strategy, national alignment, to that curriculum design, to the student competencies, the measurement, but also to probably the institutional culture. And we've heard that sustainable literacy is not just about understanding the environmental challenge. It's way broader nowadays. The SDG goals are a really good example of how broad it is and how broad it can be. We heard from you that it's good to have a start point and not an end point, but a growth point. I thought that is very insightful to know, and that you don't have to be perfect at everything, but try and pick the ones where you see the most, opportunities for your institution. We explored a little bit the importance of moving beyond just the good intentions towards the measurable outcomes, right? Because if you measure it, it's existing, right? For a lot of things, but definitely also for the multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary initiatives like sustainability. And I would really like to thank both of you for sharing your expertise and your perspective. And I want to really thank the audience for the very insightful chat. If you have any questions, if there are any, then feel free to still send them to us. I also wanted to highlight that we set up this Igniting Impact program. Our team is working really hard to giving you more insightful discussions like this, and to really understand what's happening in the region, but also looking outside of the region and bringing that knowledge in. And yeah, I hope today has been helpful in giving you more useful ideas and practical inspiration. And I hope that you continue, start, or on your sustainability journey as soon as possible. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Lisette. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
JC.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for listening.